They have adapted themselves to nature, environment, the people in the all regions they have settled in a short time throughout history. They opposed only to wars and slaughter in accordance with their belief. Dukhobors were the spirit wrestlers, deeply committed to the god and philanthropy. Srodskaya campus decorated with flowers and trees in the village of Gorolevka in Georgia. It was built in 1870s. It was a center of leadership for Dukhobor community. It is a museum under protection nowadays, full of memories, a serenity still telling ancient stories, whispering Dukhobor prayers.
года, 18 августа.
Important crossroads experienced by Dukhobors in 1800s were underlined on the inscription put into its garden in the early 1900s. It started saying, "Fair relatives of the mentioned Dukhobor surrender to God and the Tsar who gathered us in Sütlü Sular Vadisi, Milky Waters Valley in 1801, and the Holy Spirit who protect the volunteers of the truth," and continued, emphasizing the outlines of the story we are going to tell. They, Dukhobors, were an important community of a larger belief family with typical rules resembling each other in various perspectives. They were faithful, tolerant, respectful, humble and skillful Russian peasants with superior qualities, understanding earth, trees, flowers, fruit and craft and the modern technique of their times. In those old-time circumstances, life and earth were really hard, but they would not live different from others. They were like a tired wind parched with the storms, but they would always hold their heads high. In the upper class, Tsar, government and rich aristocrat clamates, an oppressive and ruthless vanity reigned. Around the government and the traditional church circles, notability and golden color were common. While the people lived in great privation, the richness of certain circles was dazzling. Days filled with ceremonies, dance, and music. The most important thing to which Dukhobors and the people who thought like them opposed from the point of their belief was entrenched hard structure of traditional Russian Orthodox Church and its strict rules far from understanding or embracing human. According to Dukhobors, the God was not in temples, icons or some symbols, but he lived in a man and his soul. Man should love God with all his heart, mind, and soul. He was a temple committed to the God, an extraordinary blessing, a holy treasure. Common prayers were a part of their happiness in everywhere and every time they came together. The most beautiful flavor in a celebration feast was to be able to feel peace and being human. They would leave a loaf of bread, some salt, and water in their houses they left behind while immigrating all the time. Not to leave those who came to their houses after them hungry.
Сияют божественным светом любви. Благодарю Тебя, Боже, за то, что Гореловка и Духоборье сияют божественным светом любви.
Man could stay alone with God whenever he desired. Dukhobor mentality was always stood by philanthropy.
За то, что Гореловка и Духоборье сияют божественным светом любви.
But wars have so much infiltrated into the life. Dukhobors believed that wars and slaughter were one of the greatest sins. Sixth commandment in the Holy Bible, "You shall not kill, you shall not murder," was a clear message for opposition to soldiership and violence. That was the golden rule. If you love your neighbor as much as yourself, how can you kill him or how can you harm him? They always opposed to and resisted slaughter, wars, being a soldier, or serving these aims. As they were known to be like that, tyrant oppression of church and state would always fall on them, especially in 1719s. Even their names were the products of that era. In 1785, the Archbishop of Orthodox Church called them Dukhoborski in order to identify them as sinners. In other words, spirit wrestlers. The priests tried to insult them. However, Dukhobors did not push that name aside, but they contributed their own interpretation to it. We are spirit wrestlers because we wrestle with the God's spirit and for Him. They expressed that they would use divine power of love while struggling for a better and humanly life. At the beginning of 1800s, Dukhobors were faced with annihilation. But one of those hard days, the hand of the fate would stretch just in time. On 25 January 1802, Tsar First Alexander, who began to rule the country with constitutional monarchy and sympathized Dukhobors, granted an amnesty to those persecuted people and gave 40 hectares of land for each family in the fantastic region known as Milky Waters in Tavria, just in the north of Black Sea. Their taxes were reduced and some exceptions were brought for their compulsory military service. A bread for Dukhobor, a drop of water, bread, and a little freedom. They could come together for the first time and unite as a community that deal everything in common. Those days, of course, would not be forgotten. Dukhobor was filled with the winds blowing from Black Sea, abundance, and fantasy. However, when Tsar Alexander I died in 1825, his brother Nicola I, who was a harsh leader in all areas, took his place. New Tsar Nicola was deeply bound to Russian Pan-Slavism and nationalism. And of course, he was bound to soldiership, war, and slaughter as well. Midwinter would fall on hearts early. In 1840, Tsarist published an ultimatum. Dukhobors had to turn back to administration and church, including military services, or they would be exiled to the mountainous regions of Transcaucasia under merciless circumstances. Great majority of Dukhobors considered keeping their faith, and between 1841 and 1845 accepted to be exiled from Tavria, their heaven on earth. Cruelty and despair of forced migration came back. New regions were weighed down with great difficulties. Caucasia was full of mountains, wild nature circumstances, and some really brutal people in that period. But Dukhobors were extraordinarily strong with their idocratic philosophy and their belief, conscientiousness against every kind of difficulty. They were located in the lands of present-day Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, Gorolevka region primarily. Dukhobors were the spirit wrestlers deeply committed to philanthropy. They were helpful new neighbors full of love and knowledge and goodwill, not useless nomads. They had their foundations in Christianity, but they respected deeply to every human and every belief. They would adapt to nature, environment, all the people in the new regions they had settled in very short time. They built clean houses in the world of exile, and they decorated their houses with flowers, relieving hearts. Their belief and opinion leaders, whom they still remember with respect and brought them to this region, Vasily Kalmykov was their leader. They built his house in Trotskaya in a garden ornamented with flowers and trees full of their hearts, a decorous and elegant house among greens but far from being luxurious. A slender tall building just nearby, where common prayers performed and guests received. Basetka. All the houses where common ceremonies were arranged will be called with that name. Later, when he died, his wife Lukeria Kankova was elected as the leader. Accepting a women administrator provided that discrimination was not accepted in that community even at those times. Women and men were the subjects of the same God, and difficult labor conditions were the same for both. Sometime later, Dukhobors were located in the around Kars behind Caucasia ruled by Russians at that period. They established settlements in these regions as well. They found the heaven they had to live in Milky Waters Valley by Sea of Azov once. Their neighborhood rules were so advanced.
Hepsi komşuydu, hepsinin de beraber konuşuyorduk, beraber çalışırdık. Hep birlikte yemeği de beraber yiyorduk. Bir gün bir misafir gelirdi. Benim bir şeyim olmasa onlar yapar getirir, tökerdiler, yerdiler. Havuç, maydanoz, turp, şalgam, ne dünyada ne desen ekirdiler. Simişka, onlar durmazdı, çalışardı. Avdotya, İsmiha, Maria, Konya, bunlar dördü bir kuma değildiler, eltiydiler birbirine. Dört evin gelini, bir evin geliniydiler. Deyir ki, komşu geleceğim, ben gene seni ziyaret etmeye geleceğim, bana deyir.
They socialized easily with the people. They shared all their knowledge and skills with their great hearts and tolerance. They knew animal breeding and processing milk and dairy products very well. Using the earth and every kind of technique and technology of their times as well. During Ottoman-Russian War between 1877-1878, Dukhobors were under oppression in order to serve Russian army. In 1874, compulsory military service call was announced in Caucasia. Dukhobors were also forced to join the army. Trade was great. If they didn't accept to help, Dukhobor village would be plundered and intruded by Russian troops who did not see Dukhobors among them or by the enemy. Lukaria Kalmikova, the woman leader of Dukhobors, had to accept the offer unwillingly in order to protect her community that was threatened with death and violence, but they would only provide support service. Ottoman-Russian War was full of sorrow and death just like all the other wars. Lucaria told young males who would participate in the only military service campaign in Dukhobor history that this compensation was inevitable. She advised them to fire over the heads of Turkish if they were first to take arms in their hands. They should stay away from the Palindrich and they should help all the casualties, ignoring their side. Dukhobor youth had to stand providing service behind this bloody war approximately for a year. After that, Lucaria Kankova sworn Dukhobors that a strong and determined leader who was going to end soldiership and slaughter forever would come up. In 1882, he invited young Dukhobor, Peter Vasilievich Verigin, to settle down in official mansion in Gorolevka village, where she would teach him different aspects of Dukhobor philosophy. On 15th December 1886, when Lucheska died, she was buried with ceremony that lasted 6 weeks. She was sent off among the other elders to eternity with love and respect again. She is being commemorated with prayers today as well. On 26 January 1887, a great majority of 20,000 Dukhobors in Transcaucasia assigned Peter Vasilievich Verygin as their new official leader. Now another new and difficult period started for Dukhobors. In 1894, Nicola II ascended the Chardon throne. During his administration, disturbance in Russia increased more. Absolute Tsar did not have the abilities to struggle desperation of the people, 90% of whom live in poverty, and especially the peasants in the countryside. On the other hand, he increased police operation unbelievably. He was proceeding towards the end step by step. His armies turned into a nightmare that could not be satisfied. While preparing to kill, he wanted to win Dukhobors who opposed war and believe in their own philosophy with all their heart. In 1890s, many young people, aged 21, were being registered for the compulsory military service. In the winter of 1894 and 95, 100 Dukhobor youth were recruited in the army. Hundreds of them had their papers in their hands. On the other hand, Dukhobor community leader Verygin was exiled to Siberia. In the far lands, a wild steppe beyond endurance, winter circumstances filled with snow, ice, and mud, and many other deadly creatures and deprivation. There were other Dukhobors exiled to these places after being sentenced to different punishments like their leader Verygin. Most of them would never be able to come back. Unfortunately, Trini was as old as the human history. Dukhobors were in great discomfort and privation in Caucasia. Operations increasing gradually about soldiership, and the disturbance was increasing. A decision of resistance had to be made, and it would be made. Eleven Dukhobor youth recruited in the army laid down their arms during the Easter ceremonies in April 1895 and refused to participate in the ceremony arranged in the area of the troop. Their honorable action, which prepared the resistance, would cause exiles to punishment troops, sorrow, torture, and death. A handful of young men started an action in the quiet corners of Russian Empire that would create a worldwide impact with its results and still affect lives of thousands of Dukhobors. This action of laying arms would spread among Dukhobors who were recruited or waiting to be recruited in a short time. And just after then, they prepared with deep whispers at first, and then with secret communications. Great weapon piles were prepared in 3 large Dukhobor regions. They were mixed with coal, wood, and fuel full of vehicles. And at the night of 28 and 29 June 1895, these weapon piles were set on fire at the same time in 3 different Dukhobor regions. Flame soared as an outcry against soldiership, arms, and slaughter. Wooden parts of the arms burned, steel parts melted, smudgy, and dirty smoke soared towards the sky. Everywhere smelled burnt uniforms, arms, and melted iron. Memories would live up to present. Flames symbolizing the setting of arms on fire in 3 regions would always be remembered. Spirit wrestlers would always remind the world the belief, resistance, and determination of the Dukhobors against soldiership and slaughter, and the universal importance of peace and disarmament. 5 young Dukhobors from Kars left a photography they had a few days before the action as a memory. Grigory Verygin, the younger brother of leader Verygin, was among them. Dukhobor leader Verygin's personal hunting rifle was put among the weapons burned in Kars region with his own instruction. Fires were so big that they could be seen kilometers away. In Kars region, the reaction of the government and soldiers to those who burned weapons and the action of returning recruiting papers after that was more compared to other regions. Arms were burned 2 kilometers away from Slavyanka village in Elizabethpol region, which is in Azerbaijan borders today. Police and soldiers who came to the region could not extinguish that fire. Arrests and beats continued during the development aftermath. A total of 100 people were arrested, including 80 people among those who initiated throwing the recruitment paper to the feet of Tsar officer, and those who were identified as the incivitees, and they were sent to the prison in Elizabethpol. 4 brothers of Verygin were also among them. Holding in Georgia, the region chosen in Wet Mountains Valley was 3 km away from Orlovka village. It was a region weaving a narrow rocky passage from upside. On the bottom of the cliff, there was a natural cave called Peshera, which was transformed into a meeting room by Dukhobors. It was a place frequently visited by the female leader Lukeria Kalmikova. It's the most important of traditional Dukhobor meeting places. At the night of 28-29 June, they gathered there. Men and women, 2,000 adult Dukhobors participated in the action of setting the arms on fire. The greatest and the most bloody representation action took place there. 200 horse Cossack soldiers were sent on them. They were whipped and the most of them drenched in blood were taken to Bogdanovka town where the governor lived. Along with earth, mud and ruthless whips of mounted troops and the bloodshed. They would not accept military service or arms despite everything. Their village were occupied. They would not take the one step back because their life philosophy was so much full of belief. Detentions, arrests, sorrow, and torture. Not long after, 4,500 Dukhobor were exiled to Georgian Valley full of harsh circumstances. First migration train left Wet Mountains regions on 18th July 1895. Tsar administration wanted them to die, not only migrate this time. They were located in village after being divided in groups in the regions they went to with a handful of food and goods. Help from the local people was also forbidden. No lands were given and buying land was also banned, and they were prohibited to leave their places to long for a job. The place they were located were Georgian or Muslim villages. Some local people who risked punishment made some little help, but that would not be enough. If Dukhobors in Kars and Elizabethpol did not provide food and help secretly risking everything, that would be inevitable for those in exile. For most of them it happened. When the exile ended, more than 1,000 Dukhobors of the 4,500 Dukhobors exiled from the Wet Mountains region lost their lives. Blood-red puppies would always remind them, however. No one cared about what happened. Suffering, torture, exiles, sorrows, murders. But there was a truly hardy man, a worldwide known respected name, Leo Tolstoy. He was not a Dukhobor, but he was very close to them with his heart and thoughts and with his peace philosophy. He was a tall other who loved life and hated slaughter, wars, exiles, and torture, always free and with new ideas, and warm-hearted wise man. He embarked a bitter struggle. He defended Dukhobors. He devoted himself to announce their screams of help both around administration circles in Russia, Europe, and beyond. He gave advertisements in the newspaper in England, in Europe, and announced help and support calls for those people, spirit wrestlers, Dukhobors who died and suffered under torture. He spent great efforts and endeavor. Everything was just like a chess game. Tolstoy succeeded to create a significant help fund together with his assistant Chertkov. He added all the income from his newly finished novel, The Resurrection, to that fund. In 1899, he helped approximately 4,000 Dukhobors migrate to Canada with the ships moving from Batum Harbor. He sent them to freedom. Dukhobors would never forget Tolstoy, whom they remembered as Dedushka, in other words, Grandpa. Sheep and sea. The weather was just like an invitation. Far horizons, Canada, being accepted, a human feeling, a respect for belief and freedom, a thought as vast as the sea. If I come to world once again, I would like to come in every place, I would like to see everywhere, I would like to belong to everywhere, live everything humanly, I would like to be same moment, the same man, the same soul, just as I am. I would like to die like a human, not in war. White misty sheets, a soft place, let no one talk, silence. When the heart of a child soars with wings, when a child runs to the future with hopeful smiles on a strong horse, when the ancient storks prepare for the warmth that seems far away with the power of their wings, when they wait for flying towards their initial love springs. Greet the place you will go to, say that spirit restless. Dukhobors are still alive somewhere. Carry them another day full of peace and freedom.
Silahları yandırın, erşe kalksın tüstüsü. Silahları yandırın, erşe kalksın tüstüsü. Her obada, her bir elde kanat atsın sözü. Yüzü gülsün insanların, bayram etsin yeryüzü. Her obada, her bir evde kanat atsın sözü. Yüzü gülsün insanların, bayram etsin yeryüzü. Yeryüzünde dost olsun, gerek insan insana. Yeryüzünde dost olsun, gerek insan insana. Kalbimdeki bu arzular, kalbimdeki bu arzular, arzusu da zamana. Ben bu sesimde yerin göğün derdi var. Sülhe gelin ey insanlar, yoksa dünya mahvolur. Ben aman yarım bu sesimde yerin göğün derdi var. Sülhe gelin ey insanlar, yoksa dünya mahvolur.